There we go. Hi, everybody. I don't know how good my internet is, and we're going to try our best today because it's been kind of shaky. So today we have a very special guest on. His name is Matt Thoreau, and he has Epic Real Estate. He and I don't necessarily agree on everything when it comes to the housing market, but I wanted to get his opinion because there's nothing better than have a difference in opinion when it comes to talking about things that are going on in the real estate world. He actually did a react video a while back on one of my market update type videos, and they were going to go ahead and have him on. Go ahead, Mr. Matt, throw yourself in there. Look at that.
Oh, you're right. Can you hear me? This is my first time using this feature.
Yes, you can. Yeah, okay. I can see you.
Good, there we go.
Yeah.
Well, so thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate the invitation. So it was nice.
Well, I felt like a superstar. I've never had anybody make a react video of me, and I was like, I think I made it.
Yeah, totally. You have arrived. Right?
I arrived. So I'm not sure about how good my video quality is. We're going to try our best because I don't know if you heard, but my internet's a little shaky today.
Yeah. And that's just the world we live in right now. We have to kind of, manage that everywhere we go.
Yes, we do. Mm-hmm. So, with your React video, what made you decide to do a React video to my market analysis? What was the reason that you decided, you know what, I need to make it a point and say something about this?
Actually, as we are looking for stuff to talk about, right? And we both have audiences and we want to keep them informed. And I don't know, maybe I'm very different than most. I'm very open-minded. I'm always looking at other people's angles and other people's perspectives because I certainly don't think I know everything by any means. And everything is just a big wild guess anyways about what's to come. But all we have is really to look at the data that is given before us and kind of use that and navigate the waters the best that we can. And so I saw that you had a particular video. It popped up in my feed. It was very popular. And I was like, okay, let's see what she's got to say. A lot of people dig it. And so I was just like, okay, I actually agreed with a great majority of it. I wasn't disagreeing with you by that much, right?
No.
It's funny how YouTube, it rewards the controversy, right? And so I was trying to stir something up, but I actually didn't agree with you or disagree with you that much. So,
right. And I'm looking at it because I look at it from a perspective as affordable housing options. So it's a little bit different. For my audience is a lot different than, let's say, an investor. For how investors would look at this housing market. But one thing I did want to show, and I'm going to throw this up really quick. This was the first comment, and I promised him I would say the comment. It says, my parents' house sold in 2018 for $100,000 and is going for $250,000 for a 27-year-old 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. It's ridiculous. Homes that went for $50,000 last year are now going for $200,000. It will crash soon. So what's your opinion? What do you think of Nathan's comment?
Wow, where did it go up 4 times in 1 year? 50,000 to 200,000 in 1 year? I don't know that market, but certainly nationwide we experienced a lot of appreciation. And I find it the people that say it's going to crash, I'm like, based on what? Right? Everyone is kind of predicting this 2007, 2008 to reoccur. And it very well might be, but it's not going to happen for the same reasons that caused it back then. It's going to have to be for entirely different reasons. Back then it was really easy to get into a loan. I mean, anybody could get into a house, and even people that couldn't afford the houses. The houses were being overbuilt, and then there was all the shenanigans going on in the secondary market. And that type of stuff doesn't exist today, right? I would say the last 12, 13 years, the lending guidelines have been super strict. It's probably the best book of business that banks have written and ever in history this last decade. So the paper is really strong. And second, the big difference right now is the inventory is so darn low. There's not a bubble to burst at the moment. Like there's not enough housing available. So, to that point that the market is going to crash, it very well might, but I don't see what's actually going to cause it yet.
You want my opinion?
Yeah, let me know.
It's unemployment, and the fact that the unemployment numbers that we see are not putting into factor of the people that have been looking for a job for over 6 months because they go off the charts. They're no longer in those graphs. And those people are the same people that are taking forbearance and are kicking that can further and further and further down the road. And now we're seeing that they're going to even let that go to June. And if you've filed, you can go ahead and keep reapplying 3 months after that. Eventually, it's going to catch up. The banks are going to want their money. And people aren't going to be able to pay. They can't catch up. That's too far to travel to get that caught up. And, you have people that haven't paid their escrows. Some states don't even take some lenders are not removing the escrows. So they're getting a bill in the mail for escrows. They're getting a bill in the mail for their homeowner's insurance. And if you don't have a job, what happens then? Then you have all the people that have affordable housing options like manufactured homes, and they're renting the land underneath it. They've gotten absolutely no reprieve whatsoever. Those are the most low income people in the United States that are most likely to lose their jobs. So there's going to be something that happens, and it's going to hurt the most vulnerable people in the United States. To me, that's a crash, because it's unfortunate, because the rich will survive once again. That's how I look at it. And it's not like everybody thinks that's going to be fine. I'm like, well, I guess it's going to be fine for you, because you're going to be able to scoop up all these houses and put people out. It's going to create a bigger divide between people that are just making it check to check. And it's going to make other people that have been already made money a lot more money. And to me, that's a crisis, and that's a crash. Got it. So
I guess the big question would be like, what is the actual definition of a crash for you? Right. To your point, the unemployment, I think, is certainly a factor. But right now, with the last report just came out at 6.4%. And so that seems high based on our current or our most recent, experience over the last, 5, 6, 7 years. But if we go back in history to where we had that unemployment rate before, that would be right about March of 2014, in the middle of Obama's second term. And if we look at what the GDP was doing, and we look what the housing market was doing, everything was on its way up at this level. So although it's tragic for people that don't have jobs, and I feel bad for that, and I certainly want them to have jobs, but overall, at this rate of unemployment, the last time we were here, it didn't have an impact on the housing market at all. The second point being, if you watch the mortgage forbearances that are in play right now, and I agree, kicking this can down the street is not gonna, if they do it again, then I think we have something seriously to consider and think about. But if you watch the mortgage forbearance as they kind of taper down, we had the huge spike in March, right, when we went into lockdown. A lot of people took the government up on that option. But if you watch it, they slowly recovered as the economy or the lockdowns loosened and people returned back to work. More and more people made those payments. And if you watch that little chart, I don't know if we can share that here, but if you watch that little chart, it's almost in perfect unison with the actual unemployment rates and the lockdown restrictions. And then it even shows right when we went back and kind of tightened up the lockdowns again in November, then all of a sudden people stopped paying again. So like everyone was forced to go back in their house. And so obviously either they're not working or there's this uncertainty about the future. So they're holding on to their cash. But now that that little spike we had in November, the last report, it just came all the way back. In fact, when we do if I have this right, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, if I understand my statistics, but if we have like a 5% drop in something, it takes like a 10% rise to recover, right? Is that accurate? How you understand? Okay, good. So that just bounced back this month. So all of those people that, skipped their payments in November, we had almost the exact percentage bounce back. So that's one thing. So I think once the pandemic restrictions loosen, and gosh, I hope we're at the end of this thing. I hope we don't have any sort of backtracking, but I think most people will return back to work and resume making their payments. I think those that return back to work and are still struggling financially, but they are employed, whether it's their old job or a new job, they're going to have modifications at their disposal, right? Those are going to be options. And then the third thing, for those that don't qualify for either one of those, based on the comment from the little comment that you posted up here. If you talk about how quickly houses are appreciating, yeah, people may be foreclosed on and forced out of their home because they can't make the payments, but they're going to have equity. They've got equity. So yeah, they're going to have to sell and they're going to have to go live somewhere else, but most likely they're going to walk away with some money in their pocket as well. So those are the three primary scenarios I see.
Are you a real estate agent or
No.
or just investor? Okay.
Former, recovering.
Recovering.
Yeah.
So when I sold houses in that crash, there were people that had equity in their house, but the banks made every reason under the sun to suck up every last penny of those people's equity. Not one person walked away from a short sale with any money in their pocket.
Well,
It wasn't even a short sale. And I'm saying is that they couldn't pay. They were, they had to move. They couldn't find a buyer. So it sat on the market. They finally get a buyer. They had equity. The bank found a million different fees to suck up the last bit of equity these people had. The banks don't care about you and your equity, and they'll find a reason to take it because you haven't paid for this long. I don't see anybody walking away with any equity. They'll figure a way.
Right. You might be right. And I wouldn't be surprised by any means. I'm just saying if history does repeat itself in that fashion, it's going to be for different reasons. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, somebody says, question, I agree with Kristina. Plus everything else is going up. Food, prescriptions, even dog food. Crash.
There we go. All right.
What do you think? What do you say something?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I look at the interest rates right now and being historically low. And to that point, with prices going up, it's all being inflated and we're experiencing inflation. And the best way to fight inflation is to take out that loan and use the debt, because as inflation eats up our dollar, it also eats up our debt. And so I think you can fight the Fed, which is typically a losing battle, or you can get on the right side of the economy and go with the Fed. And people say crash. I'm just like, I don't know what's going to cause it yet. And even to your point, you may be right, but I think there's another angle to look at, another side to look at that from.
Well, my whole thing is just the unemployment numbers are screwy. They're totally screwy because there's so many people that have dropped off even the job market graphs. After 6 months, they no longer are on the graph. So the unemployment, in my opinion, is way higher than what we're being told.
It may be.
And there's so many businesses that in your naked eye, when you walk down the street, you're like, oh man, they had to close. Oh man, they had to close.
Totally.
And if you have to see that, if you can see it visually in your little micro bubble, then it's a much bigger problem throughout the country.
Yeah.
And I mean, 2021, will we see it right away? Absolutely not. I mean, I don't think it's going to happen this year. I kind of thought it would happen this year when I wasn't sure if they were going to redo the mortgage forbearance. I was like, by the end of 2021, we're in a nightmare. And then,
I was with you there. Yeah. I had just finished a video for my channel the day before that was extended. And I was like, oh, well, crap. And I got to redo my whole video because I was just predicting this March, April, May, June of all these, foreclosures starting to happen. And so that's going to be 6 months down the road. So I got a good video down there.
Yeah, unless they keep throwing everybody a line. Not that that's a bad thing by any means of the imagination. It's just that at some point, somebody's going to have to pay the piper. And once that happens, what is the snowball effect after that? There's just so many vulnerable people that are already living paycheck to paycheck that it's going to be very difficult for them once the supposed recovery happens, because I believe that it's going to recover for people that did okay through this whole entire, pandy is what I call it. And then, but the people that have been struggling this whole time just to get food, because I don't know if you've seen people walking, trying to get food lines, cars down for miles, trying to get something to eat. Once this recovers, what shape are we going to do? What are we going to do for those people that are in the worst shape? Is it going to make a more financial divide? So you only have people that you're either dirt poor or you're extremely rich, one or the other. That makes me nervous. I do not think that's a healthy economy at all.
Yeah, I mean, that's tragic. I mean, certainly there's going to be some, as there always is, there's people that are always winning and always losing. There's people in the middle. And yeah, I think the winners and losers And I'm not saying that as a character judgment. I'm talking about the people that aren't are going through
I don't
this.
think there's the left anymore.
Say that again.
I don't think there's the left anymore. That's what I'm getting at. Like I think that like we see the middle get like this, and then there'll be this and this.
Breaking up on the audio a little bit. I couldn't quite hear you, but
oh, that's okay. I was just saying the middle is going to get very small.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Yeah, definitely. But as it all impacts, and I'm not disagreeing with a whole lot of what you're saying. And I think they're certainly eventually going to go through adjustment. Everyone that's saying crap will eventually be right.
Mm-hmm.
But when is it going to happen? I just don't think it's going to happen anytime soon.
Let me get my crystal ball out.
Yeah, right.
I'll read you the signs.
I mean, before the pandemic, we were already like 2 or 3 years overdue for a correction. Like we had already been in a really long, bullish run of real estate. And the fact that it just continued to go is like, I think it's a surprise to all of us that already that's an unprecedented event to go this long and not have a correction.
What is the cause for the low inventory? Well, there's numerous things. We didn't have a lot of new home building during the pandemic because of the fact that there wasn't available supply chain problems. Mm-hmm. No roofing supplies, no buildings materials. Those things were crippled for quite some time. Secondly, people didn't want to live in their house near the city anymore. There was lots of people who are like, I don't want to be around neighbors. I don't want to be around people. Yep. And then there's so many factors, but
right. There's still a lot of home builder. I mean, there's many home builders went out of business and never returned. Mm-hmm. So there's fewer home builders, and those that survive, their memories are still fresh and they don't want to repeat that process again. So I think there's been they've been very cautious in building new homes and how that works. And then as the pandemic hit, I think there were less homes coming on the market because people were like, well, I don't want to go outside. Where am I going to go? And then as new home builder confidence hit an all-time high in September. So they've recognized the supply and demand gap right now and the opportunity there. But then it's just showed a little slight tick downward last month because lumber prices just hit an all-time high. And so, so that's why we've got low inventory at the moment. But you're right, it's a number of things.
Jan says unemployment is more than 10%, according to Jay Powell.
Cool. I don't know. I can look at all the data that you guys have, that we all have at our disposal, and
it is like reading something. It's kind of like you could go into a room and everybody could see the same exact thing, but they would tell you 3 different stories of what happened because everybody's perception of things is different.
Right. I'm always looking at like there's always what's factual and then there's what's actual, right? So we can look at 10% unemployment, but that's factual maybe. But what's actual is 90% of the people are employed, right? And so that's 90% employment is enough to keep an economy going. It's enough to keep the housing market going. And if I was just, for example, I mean, what I see in many of my comments and what I'll hear from people is that, well, why would you ever buy a rental property right now? No one's paying rent. And that's the common consensus. And I've heard that multiple times over and over and over again. And the fact is that's just not true. I've got over 50 rental properties right now. And I only have had one issue with one of those properties the whole year. And then if you look at the actual rent tracker, I've actually got it right here. Let me just, I won't open. Never mind. I don't want to mess with the internet. And
my internet today.
Cause something to crash here.
My internet today is terrible.
Okay, so here it is. So traditionally, so what's factual that you'll hear is, there might be 20% people that are behind on their rent. And that's a fact, but it's that way every year. That's always the case. For example, in just January, this last January, 78.3% of the people were not current with their rent. That was in 2020 January. And here we are 2021 amid the pandemic, and it's only 76%. There's only a 2% difference than what it's normally like. And that was the same for, it was a little off in December. There's a little bit more of a gap, but not much. But November, there was just a 1% difference from year to year. In October, it was exactly the same. In October, there was zero difference. And then if you go back to September, it was a few more points difference. And then in August, it was almost the same again. So the difference between people being able to pay their rent and not paying the rent based on the payment rent tracker, I don't know who puts this out, but it's a good website. It's only a 2% difference. So what's factual is, 22% of people aren't paying their rent, but what's actual is 88% of those people are, or 78% of those people are.
We have a renter that couldn't pay. They left though, and so we decided to remodel the rental house. We're just like, whatever, we'll just remodel it. So it's quite a question. Forbearance issues that in that continuation should continue for 6. I don't know what the question. That doesn't seem like a question.
Yeah. Well, just to clarify, it's 3 months for Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, and it's 6 months for FHA and veterans VA loans.
Yep. Okay. So, question: housing has been rising for 10 years straight in a row. It hasn't flattened due to really. You really think it's going to continue to 12, 14, 15 years? Has it ever?
Yeah, that's what we had talked about that. I was like, this is an unprecedented term that we're in. And we were already, overdue for a correction before the pandemic even hit. So can it go that way? I would say as long as the supply is low, as long as interest rates are low, and the demand is out there for the housing, I don't think it's going to back up. But it's going to take one of those things to shift for it to stop. But it's not going to go on forever. No, definitely not. But right now, all indicators are pointing that there's no stopping it. Not anytime soon.
I'm concerned on how high it's going to go in the summer, to tell you the truth. Eddie, you can pull that question back up. Okay. This is the second time I've asked this question. How soon will this housing market crash? 2, 6 months? Thanks. I don't know. I don't think it's going to happen within the next 6 months. If there's a crash, which I still say there's going to be. I don't have a crystal ball, but I definitely do not think that within the next 6 months, because of the fact that they keep allowing people to extend their mortgage terms. Oops. Yeah. That's my dog. My dog was upset about that.
Right? Yeah, as he should be. And the soonest would be 6 months, right? Or at least we'd start to see that happen now that they've extended the mortgage forbearance. But we could start to see activity at the second half of the year if we do. Probably not until at least 2022 is what I'm guessing. And it is a guess, but it's a guess based on everything that we know. But again, I just kind of go back to that thing, the word crash, because we're all like, we were here during 2000, 2007, 2008. We remember what that was like. But if you go through the history, that's a once in a lifetime event. The housing market has never seen that before. So the crash being, it's going to be maybe a downward adjustment, but the word crash is so dramatic, and I just don't know if we're going to have that again. And the other thing that might that would also prop up a crash or prevent the crash from happening is because inventory levels are so low. If all of those houses that are in mortgage forbearance went on the market, that might bring us back to right about a level normal standard market with 6 months of inventory, like a normal real estate level.
Yeah, I mean,
right? No,
I lost my train of thought, so I'm not gonna.
Okay. I'm just looking at supply and demand. You know that because I was an agent. And I know that there's 6 month market.
There's still people with those loans. There's still people out there with those kinds of loans. It didn't, even though the restrictions were higher and everything, you can still get a loan like that. They're still available.
Right. So if all of those came back on the market with inventory so low, I think it would just even out the supply and demand and put us in a normal 6 month market.
Okay. Question: if people bought a house at a high price due to low interest rates, are they more likely to panic and sell once the market crashes?
Could be. I mean, if they're speculators, I'm a real estate investor. I teach people how to do this. I do it myself. I've been doing it for almost 12 years now. But I'm not a fix and flipper. I'm not a wholesaler. I buy and hold. So every property that I buy, My intent is for it to generate income from it and hold it forever.
That's what I do.
I don't always hold forever, but that's always my intent.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as it's producing an income, because I made it through 2007, 2008, 2009. It wasn't easy, but I made it through because I buy it for a certain purpose. I'm not speculating on the market. I'm not banking on appreciation. I'm not counting on it. If it happens, that's great. It's icing on the cake. But the real cake of the investment is to hold property and to produce an income from it. So if those people are panic selling, it's just because they are indeed panicking.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think there was a few people that did that, but it wasn't common. It was just that they had to. Lawnmower says, do you think it will be more of a market adjustment than a crash?
That the picture he used for his avatar is that I posted that like 4 years ago on my Facebook page, and it comes up as a Facebook reminder every 12 months. And I just laugh so hard every time I see it. And I just saw it again. And I was like, that's such a funny dog picture. Anyway.
So do you think it's going to be a correction?
Question?
He wanted to know if it was going to be more of a correction than a crash, that in your opinion.
Mr. Lawnmower, Mrs. Lawnmower, I think absolutely it's going to be a correction.
Okay.
That's what I think.
My feeling is different.
I know. And that's why we're here. How boring would it be if we just agreed the whole time?
I know. Most of the time, most of my guests I end up changing their mind. They're like, so except for Jeremy Knight. Jeremy Knight was one that didn't agree with me. Eddie, you got any some more questions to throw up there? Question: thoughts on buying an RV lot? Ooh, this is right up my alley. Okay,
yes,
so
that sounds like for you.
Yes. So RV lots are really great cash cows, especially if you're in a resort area. And if you can do an RV lot where you have rented tiny homes, boom, you're making bank. I mean, this time, like, of course, because of the pandy, a lot of those people that owned RV parks that were renting out spaces, they thought they were going to do terrible. But do you know what most people did? They got in their RV and started traveling because they couldn't work. So they took their family and they've been traveling in their RVs. Those camps have been making bank. This is one of the industries that did really well because of this, because more families decided to take their family on the road because their kids didn't have to be in school, and they could work from their RV. So if you're planning on doing that, I suggest having a few tiny home type rentals, and then have several spaces that you can rent out as well.
Very good.
Question: if all is well, why government is keep extending mortgages and evictions, moratorium dates, plus supply is low, very low? You think it will return back to normal?
Gosh, why the government does what they do is a bit of a guess. It would be a total guess, because a lot of stuff, regardless of which side of the aisle you sit on, seems to defy logic sometimes.
Well, the one thing that you and I both agree on: all politicians suck.
Yeah, exactly. I think if you're depending on either one of those sides to save you, I think you're going to be very disappointed. But the question was, do I think it'll ever return? I mean, yes, it will. When? I don't know. If you look at the growing population, this is another thing that's factual and actual. Factually, you'll hear in the news that the growth of the population is slowing down. And percentage-wise, on a decade-by-decade basis, it is slowing down. The percentage is getting smaller. But the number of people is significantly growing, and the demand is particularly over the millennials are hitting. There's a big bubble at the age between 30 and 40 years old for the next 10 years, and there's a big portion of a big bubble in our population there, and that represents when most people will buy their first house, and it also represents a time frame where, that's kind of a frame where you'll start a family and you'll need a bigger house, or you'll get promoted through your job. You'll make a little bit more money and you want to upgrade your house. So typically 2 houses are purchased between 30 and 40 years old. And that's a big portion of the population. So there's going to be a lot of growing demand. Supply is going to have to really catch up. New home builders are going to have to really start pulling it together. And that population thing, and that might not feel like, something that you can, count on here, right? As that's going to have an impact, but it absolutely is. we're not the only industry. Real estate is not the only industry that looks at those types of demographics. I mean, if we go back to when Mr. Lee Iacocca saved the car company Chrysler, he looked at the demographics. That's how he did it. He looked at, wow, look at all these baby boomers. They're starting families. What are they going to need? They're going to need a bigger vehicle to carry their families around. And that's where the minivan came into play, and it saved the whole company. And you can go back to when the baby boomers were born. It's where we had the Gerber baby food, came this giant conglomerate and this household name, and they became teenagers, and it impacted Levi Strauss. They had their biggest years then, and the Ford Mustang was the biggest selling car at the time, and that was the biggest seller where they set all their records. And so those little demographic bubbles are very key to making predictions. And right now, those baby boomers are moving through, anything having to do with recreation or retirement or assisted care or any sort of health services. So it's having a huge impact on all of those industries. But the generations before the baby boomers are all bigger, right? So they're going to have the same impact on all those different industries. And the housing market is no different. The demand is no joke. It's already here. It's walking the earth. There is enough demand walking this earth to gobble up as much supply as we can build.
Before that was wonderful. I just want to say really quick, there was a $20 super chat from VCG Construction, and he said, when will the bubble pop on Camden waterfront? I'm not in your housing market though. That's Vince from VCG Construction. If you want me to pull up some numbers from a Camden real estate agent that I know out in the area, I will gladly do that for you. And I can give you a cost market analysis and then show you everything that's been selling. We'll do it all the way back for the last 5 years. So you can see how the market's gone up and down. If you want to contact me after the show. info@KristinaSmallhorn.com. Question. I have a choice to sign a 6-month lease, a year lease, month to month. Would supply increase in the next 6 months? I just go ahead and do the whole year. I would, if you're thinking about doing a year lease, that's what I would do. That way you can wait out the market. I mean, it's only going to go so high. And I don't think that interest rates are going to go any higher anytime soon because they need people to buy houses. One of the things I want to talk about really quick, though, that you mentioned that there's a lot more people that are needing homes. But one of the problems is they're not affordable. And the average American cannot afford the average American home. The incomes don't match up. And I would hope if the government wants to stick their greedy little hands into this, is that they would take some of these commercial buildings and turn them into condos that people could purchase using a mortgage. Mm-hmm. I would like them to go ahead and make the mortgage restrictions a little bit better for people that are buying houses under $65,000. That would get them in condos a lot easier. And why don't you use a lot of this empty, vacant commercial property, rezone it, and use it for affordable housing options? They could do that with old malls and shopping centers. They've done it. It's very common. And one last thing is they allow for less restrictions on smalls. They've done it before. After World War II, they made very small, 600, less than 1,000 square feet homes. Mm-hmm. Why don't they open that up for a lot of these areas that do need more affordable housing options? You can put them right next to each other. People would just be happy to have their own piece of America.
Yep. I think they're going to have to do that, actually. At some point, the commercial space is a lot of it, I think, will be converted to residential.
Oh, Eddie, pull up that article about commercial real estate. This just came out. I think I sent it to you. He's going to pull it up in just a second, but they're talking about the commercial real estate market and how it's going to really take a big Fed sounds the alarm on commercial real estate business and bankruptcy. And I believe it because like I said earlier, how many times have you gone down the street and you see, oh my gosh, my favorite noodle place is gone. And oh, wow, that business went out of market. And not only that, big companies are realizing employees do just as much work from home as they did prior to this. And they're like, there's less liability, less insurance. They don't have to pay for the space. All they have to do is provide their employee a computer and they work just as hard. So I think a lot of employers are deciding that a lot of people are going to be working from home. So I think the commercial real estate, if they can clear that out and start making it for residential areas, I think that would be a good thing for people that are looking for affordable housing options.
I'd rather see the private sector do it rather than the government, though.
Well, I'm just looking at it as a reflection that it's been done before in World War II.
Right.
It has been something that there is a blueprint for it to make it happen and make it happen successfully. So that's the only reason I say that the way I say it. You got quiet.
No, I agree. No more to say. I was just saying, I've lived in government housing before, and so that's
Me too.
I know what that's like. So I don't want the government to have control over the housing because it doesn't make for good living conditions.
I do too.
I would like to see the private sector do it and then be incentivized by the government to keep it affordable. To do it that way.
Right. I'm talking about them like you've seen. You can I'm talking about the houses they built after World War II. Those little tiny houses, but they gave. They made it easier for home builders to build these houses one right after the other.
Right.
So that's what I'm saying, not necessarily government housing, like the little pods that they throw you in that look like prison cells. Not that.
Yeah, no. I get nervous when I hear that word, government housing. Like,
well, I had tax credit housing. I lived in tax credit.
That's fine.
Yeah, I had that. I lived in that. All right, Eddie, you can throw up another question if you could, please. Question. The difference is that tenants who cannot pay cannot be evicted. Won't that affect especially the smaller landlords, investment homes that are not under the CARES Act?
Got it. So a lot of evictions are only postponed. There's only a moratorium for non-payment directly related to COVID-19. So a landlord can evict for any other reason, any other violation of the lease. So that's a little bit misleading. And I think tenants are taking a little bit false sense of security around that. And again, it's just like the mortgage forbearance. It's not a dismissal of payments. It would be a postponement of payments. And so, and with that said, back to my earlier point, there's not a big difference in who's paying rent now and who's paying rent this time last year before the pandemic.
Well, I had renters paying rent and now they're not paying, but they left. They didn't try to stick around. They left. I forgot. I don't know why my brain is like Swiss cheese today. I think it's because I know my internet's terrible and it's like haunting my brain.
It's hanging in there. You're doing okay. It's all right. Before we started, it was like I was like, uh-oh, this is not going to work. But it's honestly,
when I did the speed test, it still wasn't great. Eddie's like, just go live anyway. So I was like, whatever. Yeah, Eddie, go ahead and throw up one more question. So, question: have we had a housing crisis every 10 years? I was told in 2008. I know anything in the 90s and further. If not, how many drops in housing have we had over 100 years? Can you give me a number? I know we had one in the 80s. I know we had one in 2007, 2008, 2009. It took us 10 years to recover. And then we haven't hit one yet, but I think we're due.
Well, to her question, that one that we experienced in 2007, 2008, the most recent one that we all remember, that was once in 100 years of that size. The one in the 80s wasn't of that magnitude by any means. And so, and it typically is an 8 to 11 year cycle. So you're right on point there. And that's where we were saying earlier that, we were overdue already before COVID hit. So yeah, this is a different time right now. This hasn't happened before what we're living through right now.
So the home builders are getting more supplies. It does seem like in my area, we're getting a lot more new home builds. I can see them on the MLS. I am starting in my specific area. I'm starting to see houses that are a little bit older sitting on the market for a little bit longer, which it doesn't mean a whole heck of a lot because usually around here, if it gets cold, people don't want to go out and look at houses. But it was something that was a little bit eye-opening because it was so busy in November and December. But February seemed to be a month that people have slowed down on buying. Have you seen anything like that in your specific area?
I haven't seen any. I live in a really nice part of town, but I rent my house. I mean, I live in a multi-million-dollar house, but I rent it. Because it's cheaper for me to do it that way. I can have a much nicer lifestyle, but I still have all the benefits of real estate because I have a bunch of rentals and the rentals pay for this house. So I'm not really seeing like middle America, like out and about, because I don't really leave my house too much either right now. And I haven't for a while, but the luxury market seems like it's doing really good because there are a lot of new luxury houses being built around here. So my concern is with just the price of lumber. Like if we want to put more properties on the market, if the builders are going to do that because there is the demand for it, but with the price of lumber, I'm wondering, is it going to pencil for them? Because it's a huge spike. It was a huge spike in lumber. I'm like, how are they going to do this and be able to still sell it at an affordable rate? I mean, pretty much anywhere in the middle America and the South, that's no go. You cannot build a house and make money off it if you were to sell it for market value after it was built.
They've increased the prices on new home builds a lot.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah.
But I mean, but you gotta like I always explain to people, the reason why it's a lot is because of this. Now we do have one builder that is kind of like a track builder, and it had a supply in a warehouse, so he's still able to make affordable houses, and they're selling like popcorn, you know.
Yeah.
Like within the market, but the sellers are still asking like way too much. I just, in my area, the way I see it, that I can't even imagine that it retain the value that the people are getting for their homes. It doesn't even make sense. Question: can you clarify what percentage drop is a correction, and what percentage is a crash?
On a percentage, no. I would speak more in like commercial, or like not commercial, but retail real estate terms. You know, a correction could go for, and I'd look at it in months of inventory. I would look at a correction could add a month or two of inventory to the housing supply. A crash, I would consider that a swing of the pendulum from a seller's market to a buyer's market.
How many months supply is that in your opinion?
Well, I mean, traditionally, the whole time I've been in real estate, it seems like 6 months is the equilibrium point, right? But I don't know if in the last 10 years if there's ever been 6 months supply. So we've been in
as in my area, that's very possible. Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, I would say in the last 7 or 8 years, I mean, it's been pretty much a seller's market.
Sellers, really? In the last 8 years?
Yeah. So let's see, it was 2008. So yeah, it probably started around 2014-ish. So I guess that's what, 6 or 7 years.
Okay.
When prices started to go up and the sellers continued to get more and more money for their house month after month. Yeah.
I would like those. I would say that that time we were kind of flat. It was almost even, you know, for a couple more years. And then it didn't even turn into a seller's market until a couple of years after that. But that's just my personal experience.
This is kind of good that we're talking because we kind of have two different perspectives because, you know, you deal with people that are resident owners, right? And I deal with people that are buying investment property. And so what I have seen over the last, since probably starting 2014, 15, is that cash on cash return on the investment properties continues to drop because the purchase price continues to rise, but the rents aren't keeping up with the purchase price. So I've seen that gradual drop in that ratio, but in the last, I guess 8 years was too long, but maybe 6 or 7 years.
Got a super chat. It says here in Philly with new homes, you don't pay taxes for 10 years.
Oh, that's sweet.
I didn't know that. I know that. Time to move to Philly.
Can you just imagine if you got if the first time home buyer's credit passes and then you get it at these 3% low rates and you don't have taxes for 10 years, gosh, you want to gobble over.
$15,000 for home buyers is a hose. That's a dumb thing. Question. I know indicators are saying to you guys there are no red flags in sight, but this is a stir that has started in just a few weeks about housing, and it's coming up in the news media and YouTube like this. When do you, Matt and I have a difference of opinion. I still say that there's going to be what he would call a correction, and I would say it's a crash. I personally believe, I don't know, it's not going to happen in the next 6 months, but someone's going to have to pay the piper soon, and I think it's going to be a hot mess. Matt thinks it's just going to be a correction, and then we'll probably go flat for a while, and then we'll tick right back up. He's more optimistic than I am.
All I'm saying is you could very well be right, Kristina, and I won't feel like, you know,
if I'm wrong, I'll
be surprised. All I'm saying is whatever causes it is not going to be the same thing that caused it last time.
Absolutely not. Never. No, it's not. There's going to be so many different factors, but there was one specific factor that caused it the last time, and that was kooky loans. Banks just giving loans to anybody that walked in the door. That was a dumb thing. And people don't realize those loans were existence since like before, like right at Reagan, George Bush. That's when they started doing those, but they didn't become a popular package until like the 2000s. So they were available for years, but the rooster didn't come to the nest until 2006.
Well, the population aged, so we had more people in the buying pool.
Yes. Here we go. Question: are housing prices only going up because we're experiencing the beginning of a hyperinflation? It's a good question.
Yeah, I would say no. I would say that they're going up because of low interest rates and an imbalance of supply and demand. The demand is just super strong and there's nothing for sale. So that's why I think they're going up. The inflation, that's a whole other conversation. It gets very complicated to go down a deep rabbit hole and doing a whole other episode on that. But are we in hyperinflation? I don't think we're at hyperinflation. In fact, it feels like we could be because, what someone had mentioned that, utilities are going up and gas is going up and food is going up and when the lumber is going up. We're only slightly above the normal 2%, but we've been flat for a couple of years. So it feels like we're feeling that impact a little bit more, and it might feel like it's the beginning of hyperinflation, and it very well may be, but I don't think there's anything to be concerned about right this second.
Okay. Eddie, go ahead and throw up another question. He's my little producer in the background.
Fantastic. These are great little features. I didn't know you could do this. This feels like a real TV show or something.
Do you have, this is a off topic. This is a program called StreamYard, and then Eddie's on another computer.
No, I have this. I just didn't know it did all this cool looking graphics stuff.
Okay. I'll have to show you later.
Right.
If given a choice to invest $50K in my current home or buy a rental property, what are your thoughts on owning a rental and risky? Own a rental property. I don't even care what Matt says. Own a rental property. What do you say, Matt?
I would agree with you 100%. The caveat is, however, though, where you live, is it cheaper on a monthly basis for you to buy or rent? Because you're going to have to pay for your shelter one way or the other, right? So that's what I would be looking at. If you can buy or rent for about the same price, then I would go ahead and get the rental property and have that rent help offset your rent for your primary residence. But I own a bunch of houses in Memphis, and I own some in St. Louis. I own some in Cleveland, and there, I mean, my mortgage payments on those houses are like $150, $200, and they rent for $700 and $800. So it's like, if that's your situation, then absolutely buy that $500 gap per month. That's going to make you a lot more money than the income from a rental property ever would. But, you come here to where I live in Vegas, and it's the exact opposite. What I pay for $5,000 in rent would cost me $10,000 a month to own. So so it depends on where you live and what the cost of living is for a roof over your head.
I want to say thank you to Jeff Patriot for going ahead and giving me a $3 super chat. I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, people can send you money through the StreamYard thing too? How does this work?
We listen in YouTube. I'm going to give you one after we're done with this. Question: is it normal for a new home builder to put in a contract that you come out of pocket if the house doesn't appraise or come short? This is happening in California. I don't know if you know this, Matt. So in California, you could put a contract in a house, and let's just say it's $300,000. It takes like another 45 to 60 days for it to be completed. Within those 40 to 60 days that it was completed, they can appraise that price and say, well, now it's $350,000. And then you're like, wait, no, we had a contract. They're like, no, either you want it or you don't, or we've got somebody else in line to buy it. Now, here in the state of Louisiana, you have a contract. You have to abide by the contract unless there's some kind of addendum that says if it goes up X amount of dollars, you're going to be have to cover the cost. If the property appraises for that, to cover our out-of-pocket cost of lumber and supplies. They don't have it there. They're like, this is what it is now. So if you're not going to pay, that's what you're going to pay. That's it.
Yeah. So he's asking, is it normal? And I was like, yeah, when the control is in the seller's hands, it's absolutely normal. And that will shift the other way, and it'll be you'll be able to dictate those terms if the market shifts.
Then the sellers are going to be begging, oh, we'll throw in a refrigerator, or we'll put in blinds, we'll go ahead and give you a
Right.
washer, or dryer.
They were giving away in 2006, or when I was living in Los Angeles, they're giving away BMWs with new homes. They're like, just please buy them.
Mini Coopers. We had Mini
yeah.
Coopers here, and we had and like $15,000 in closing costs. I'm like, it's not even going to cost $15,000 in closing costs, but they made it sound so good. You know, they were doing all this stuff. But yeah, it was a Mini
It's
Cooper.
funny, if we were doing this back then, there'd be someone that's selling homes with, is it normal that I have to put a Mini Cooper in the garage to sell the house? Right. But to that point, to be a little bit more serious about it, after 2007, 2008, the whole appraisal industry went under a complete overhaul and significant restrictions and guidelines that they had to operate within. And what's happening right now, when a market appreciates this quickly, they have to wait for closed sales to justify the value of the next property. And if you're ready to close today, but the values out there that would justify your price haven't closed yet, they can't use that in their appraisal. So that's really, if I were to step into that builder's shoes or any home seller's shoes, that's just someone that's really understands how the appraisal process works, is because that house might be worth $300,000 and there might be 10 people that are ready to pay $300,000. But if that appraisal comes in at 280, which it very well could, then that's a $20,000 gap. So the seller doesn't want to take that hit if I've got 9 other people behind you, but I'm going to choose you to buy the house as long as you agree to these terms. If you don't, these 9 other people will. So it's just who the power goes to.
But one thing people should know is that if you have an FHA loan and you have an FHA appraisal done to that specific home and the house doesn't appraise, if you're a seller and you think that's going to happen, you're not going to be able to get another person that's coming through buying a house with an FHA loan and think it's going to appraise higher, because it's not going to. That FHA appraisal stays with that house for 6 months. So just know that. Question: have you seen some various anecdotes about overseas cash buyers buying all over the country, then leaving the house vacant for years? Are you guys seeing that at all? Now, I've heard that happening in New Orleans. I've not seen it here in Baton Rouge. I know it's very common in Canada. They've said a few people, some areas in Texas, but it hasn't been a big problem that I'm aware of. Have you seen that, Matt?
I know instances of it. So I know it happens and I know it's happening, but to what degree or to what magnitude, I don't know.
Right. Urban Explorer says he needs more cookies now. I make these homemade cookies and I send them to him for his birthday. Jason Miller with a $5 super chat says, I have no inventory in the southern Indiana. Just wanted to say thanks for trying to educate your viewers. Thank you, Jason, for always coming in and saying hi and with a $5 super chat. I appreciate you. Any other questions you want to throw up there, Mr. Eddie? He's my little video producer. I do appreciate you coming in here. You've been a very good sport. I know some of my viewers can be kind of brutal.
I think this is a good lesson that we could have opposing opinions in this country and still be civil with each other and laugh about it. It's like it's not the.
We need to get back to that.
We take life too seriously. There's that famous saying.
Stop fighting and start listening.
Yeah, right. Mark Twain says, don't take life so seriously. None of us are getting out of it alive. So I always think about that, and it lightens the spirit on whenever I have a disagreement. So
true story. Yeah. Question: would you consider Florida the best state to buy property in today's market? And do you consider a possibility of climate change when buying property? That's an interesting question when it comes to climate change. I would live in South Louisiana, and in the back of my mind, I do think about the fact that, first of all, I don't know if you know this, Matt, half of our state is below sea level, and we've had an increase of flooding throughout the area. If I was to ever build a house again here in Louisiana, mine's on a slab now. There's no way in God's green earth I would put it on a slab. I would put it on piers, which was how they used to build homes here in Louisiana. Now they have been building up the wetlands and everything else, but I still think in the back of my mind, it's one of those things I consider when it comes to real estate here in this specific area. I definitely think about climate change because it's common. We get more hurricanes, we get more flooding. Do you ever think about that, Matt?
Never. But based on what you just shared and where you live, I guess that would be a consideration. I've pretty much lived in a place where flooding isn't an issue, I guess. I also think about climate change, and I have no idea how that topic became a political issue. It seems like it's just a science issue, but doesn't it happen over happens over like hundreds of years? It's not like I don't think any drastic change in the climate is going to impact my ownership of a property in the next 30 years. I could be totally wrong and totally naive, and I'm open to anyone that wants to tell me that. But I just feel like it's such a long-term change and a slow and gradual change that I feel like we'd be able to dodge that if we had to.
Well, I hear what you're saying, but if you look at our area, the amount of wetlands that have been eradicated because of all sorts of different reasons, that's allowed for a lot of stronger hurricanes to make more damage throughout Louisiana, because we opened it up to like oil companies and everything else. They plow it out so they can drill oil. We've been changing that over the years. The Army Corps of Engineers has made all sorts of advances, but it causes a problem. And we still are seeing the effects of that problem, which is increasing in flooding in areas that never have flooded before. That what we have is what they consider flood zone X, which is the lowest likelihood of you flooding. 2016, many of those houses had feet of water in them, feet. So there is
certainly have personal experience with it. I have no experience whatsoever with it, so I'm probably not even qualified to answer the question.
Okay, question. I bought my house during the last crash, and right now, if I sell it, I can make upwards to $300,000. I don't retire for another 5 years. So I don't know if I should sell or rent and hold on to it and wait.
This will be a very controversial answer. It depends on what your goal is and what your idea of retirement is, right? The way that I see it, and this, like I said, this is the controversial part. I see with having $300,000 of equity locked up in your house, I see it as your money has retired before you have retired. So your money is no longer working for you. So what I would say, if you're happy with where you live, now that's another thing, because this is where you live, and your comfort and your standard of lifestyle and your comfort of living is important to where you actually, lay your head. But what I would do if I were in your situation, without knowing much more than what you've shared with me, is I would refi all that money out and buy an income property, or 2 or 3.
I actually agree with you.
Shut up! Get out of here!
No, I do agree with you, because I think
that would have a significant impact and make for a nicer retirement as well.
Because you always have income coming in.
Absolutely.
I think when HELOCs were still available, I always told people, get a HELOC and buy yourself a rental property. I tell people that all the time.
To the point of, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was just going to say, to the point, and the reason that becomes controversial is because people get scared of debt, right? They work for a very long time to pay off their house, and they feel like they've accomplished something, but then they hit their retirement years and they're sitting on all this equity, and then people end up doing this reverse mortgage and pulling all their money out of their house that they worked so hard to put it all in there in the first place. Yeah. So be proactive about it. And then the idea of where someone brings up hyperinflation, I don't think we're in hyperinflation, but I certainly think, the Fed is almost guaranteed he's going to push inflation higher than before he touches the interest rates. So by taking it, the inflation is going to eat up the value of your dollar, but it also eats up the value of your debt. So to be leveraged in that way, to use it smartly like that, don't take out your $300,000 and go take a vacation, but take the $300,000 out, go buy those income properties. And that inflation is going to eat up that debt as well, but you're still going to have those properties 5 years, 10 years from now, and you're going to be paying with 5 year, 10 year from now money to pay off yesterday's debt. So it's just a really smart move. Don't over leverage yourself. I'm not saying be irresponsible about it, because that's typically the next thing I get. But do it in a way where it's comfortable and you're not cutting your margins too thin. But definitely take that money and put it to work for you, because it's out there chilling on the beach in retirement before you get to do that yourself. And that's just not fair.
And speaking about chilling on the beach, you should go ahead and go and buy yourself an RV park where people rent out the spaces and they can park their tiny homes
Yeah.
there. And
Put it into
that's a
something
great
that's gonna
income
produce
property.
income for sure.
Yeah, and produce income. Question: I purchased a home in SoCal for $325,000 in 2010. I bet you're sitting on a mint right now. Should I refinance or sell at $655,000 or higher veteran loan? I have custody of 6 grandchildren because of the death of my 2 daughters. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. So sorry.
It's almost the same question, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I would, that's the same answer. Just like your equities there, find income property. But she's got 6 grandchildren. I don't know if she can handle income like that, like debt. I don't know what her ability is. You would have to talk to somebody on like a financial advisor and see what you're able to handle as far as income properties are concerned. If you can handle it, do it. But if you can't, I understand. I
think it'd be
would
more a conversation more for finding a trustworthy, competent property manager for you.
all those things,
Yep.
things, because
Yep.
she's got to take care of 6 kids.
Totally.
So
But
yeah,
wouldn't some extra income help that out?
it could, but if she can't handle what she's got, then you don't want to put more on her plate.
Right. We only know what we know.
Yes, exactly. Matt, I want to say thank you so much for coming in today. I know we don't
Are we all
necessarily.
done?
Yes, this is it. We've been
Oh,
on
it's getting warmed up. Okay.
We've been on over an hour, but I want everybody to make sure that you hit the little like button if you like this. I know that my internet was a little off. I'm going to get that fixed. And I'd love to have Matt on again since we don't agree. We don't agree on everything, but we do agree on some things. And it didn't get hostile or angry. So I want to thank everybody for coming in and stopping in. Over 400 of you have stopped in and watched the show. So be sure you hit that like button on the way out. Matt, you have a wonderful time. And I want to tell everybody, Matt has a YouTube real estate channel, which is called Epic Real Estate. Go over there and watch the video where he does a react video. He shreds me apart. He totally says what an idiot I am in one of his videos.
Yes, I called you a bunch of nasty names and just
horrible. And thank you everybody for the super chats. Everybody have a wonderful Sunday. Wave goodbye, Matt. Bye. Thank you.
I appreciate it. And thank
No
you,
problem.
everybody.
Thank you for coming on.